Hello, everyone. Today I have Chris Singel with me, and I'm super excited about this conversation. We're going to be talking about lots of cool stuff. So, welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, I want to read your bio real quick so people know more about you. So, Chris Singel is a self-proclaimed AI optimist who blends humor, wit, and a healthy dose of realism in his approach to the rapidly evolving world of artificial intelligence. With a knack for turning potential daunting concepts into relatable and even entertaining discussions, Chris encourages audiences to rethink their relationship with work in the age of automation. Drawing from personal experiences and historical anecdotes, he presents AI not as a threat, but as a tool for liberating us from mundane tasks, allowing more time for creativity, connection, and the pursuit of what truly matters in life. His talks are a refreshing mix of lighthearted storytelling and insightful observations, designed to make you laugh, think, and maybe even reconsider your career path. I love that.
And I think it used to have a line that says, Chris used AI to write this. So
It
I think,
did.
yeah, I think we're going to talk in a bit about the TED Talk and my consulting and my book. But really, as I was building all these things, I said, well, now with everything you know about me, AI, write a quick bio about me. And that's what came out. So it's pretty good, right? It sounds like a
Yeah,
human wrote it. Yeah.
it does. I've been playing with AI a lot lately too. Probably not as long as you have because it looks like you started in 2018, 17, something
Oh
like that.
gosh. So yeah, and there's my day job is digital marketing. So there's some AI tools like Salesforce and Facebook have these parts where I started talking about AI in 2019 in the Grand Rapids Business Journal. Even before that, I was at the Singularity Summit in 2011. So I've been interested in the space for a long time. For those of you watching and not listening, I've got a ton of nerdy AI books back here about robots and sci-fi. So it's a super interesting topic. But yeah, as it's evolved, I think the biggest step for me was in March of 2013. Google released their chatbot Bard, and I was in the shower, and I know we'll talk about your shower experiences. And I thought, can I use AI to write a book about AI? So I got out of the shower. I don't have my notepads in the shower yet that I know you love, Dina. And I did 12 minutes of work, and I had a full book about AI that AI had written. So a couple days after that, it was a #1 new release in its category on Amazon. And a little bit after that, I was appearing on local news and talking about it and speaking at universities and hosting corporate events and doing workshops for businesses, and eventually did a TED Talk about it last fall. So now that has, I think, just broken 250,000 views. So hoping to get some more views on that and tell the world, hey, it's not something to be afraid of. It's just another tool we can use.
Absolutely. I think it's awesome. There's so many similarities in our paths and what we do. It's crazy. But I think that the the part about training AI to know you, I've
Mm-hmm.
been doing that a little bit, kind of playing with the marketing for the Shower Genius in this podcast, and it's fascinating what what you can input information. You can even put your book in there and ask
Yeah.
it to tell you all kinds of things, and it's fascinating to me. And at first I was very leery, I'll be honest. I was very leery at first, and I was like, well, I'm never going to put anything out that I don't write myself, and and all of those things that I know a lot of people think about. So I have transitioned out of that a little bit. I mean, I always read it and edit it, or you
For
know
sure. Yeah.
all of that, but it definitely comes up with ideas that
Mm-hmm.
maybe you don't have, and it gives you um even if you have ideas, you can ask it for feedback, and it will give you real content around what your audience would think about it. It's
Yeah.
just fascinating to me.
So you hit on a few points there that I want to touch on. So for the TED
Mhm.
Talk, I wrote every word of it myself and I was ready to go. And then the TED promoters said, hey, by the way, we have a format that we think tends to be successful. So I was like, well, let me test this out. Let me take their format and everything I've written and use AI to reformat it. So at the end of the day, every word and formatting piece of it was done by AI, which I think is a funny little subtext to a talk about AI. And in fact, they also have professional speech writers and presentation coaches. And one of the speech writers said, oh, I really love this line. That line was written by AI and did not make the final cut because I felt a little weird about that. But then on the flip side with the book, the story isn't the book. The book is fine. It's 99 cents. I'm not encouraging your listeners to go buy this crappy book that took me 12 minutes of work. But it did have ideas in it that I wouldn't have thought of. And it was probably about as good of a book as would have taken me, I don't know, a month, 6 months to write. So the fact that it could be done in 12 minutes, have some ideas that I wouldn't have thought of is a great point. For generating ideas, a rough draft that's good enough, that's amazing. And then the third point I was going to say is just, yeah, if you don't understand a topic or you want to learn more about it, I was just on a podcast talking about financial topics where I don't really understand it, but using AI as sort of a sounding board to say, I think this makes sense this way. What am I not thinking of? It really helps with those unknown unknowns to figure out what your blind spots are. Because again, it is like Google. It can search the entire internet and the entire human knowledge base to sort of fill in what your blanks are. And in that sense, I think it's a great rough draft tool. I think it's a great educational tool, and it can be a great fine-tuning tool if you're willing to work with it and help train it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about when you first discovered AI, because it wasn't obviously where it is now,
Mhm.
and what that looks like, and how you got interested in it, and what that looked like at the beginning.
Gosh, that's a really good question. I think a lot of what people are talking about as AI now are just fancy algorithms, which is any sort of formula, data, validation stuff. And it makes me think back to a job. I worked at Funny or Die, Will Ferrell's internet comedy company. So a lot of our job was watching comedy videos, but it was also a community-based site at the time. So anyone could upload videos, and we had thousands of videos. And so my friend and I tried to determine what makes a good comedy video. And we built our own backend algorithm to say, well, on average, videos of this length tend to perform well within this category with this many funny votes. And within this period of time. So if it was recently launched, maybe we can help promote it, get it more funny votes. And that's effectively a version of AI to algorithmically weight what you think is going to be relevant to people. Because if you really take a step back, that's what these large language models are doing. All of these chatbots are just predicting what is most likely to sound like a good response to you. So that's when I caution people of, they're not really doing math and thinking the way people are. They're improvising. They're making up an answer that sounds good. But if you're creating a rough draft or a TPS report that no one cares about at your office, yeah, make a version that looks good enough, have a human verify it, and send it along. So once we did that, going back to the comedy video example, once we sort of built that algorithm, it made our jobs a lot easier to say, well, let's watch these 20 and see if it's accurate, as opposed to, I'm not going to watch every video on the site, especially if 100% of people voted it to die, that it's not funny. So we know that that probably is not funny. So using AI to sort of narrow the amount of work you need to do allows you to then prioritize the stuff that is important.
Yeah, that that's true. But that brings me to another question. Like, how did you get into comedy?
Oh gosh, my dad was in politics. I was going to George Washington University for a degree in public policy with a minor in applied ethics. So ethical policy is already a joke in and of itself. We'll skip past that. But I was sitting in an American politics class, and this would have been about 2006, 2005. And the professor said, right now, the most influential person in American politics is probably Jon Stewart. And I've always loved comedy. I had a little comedy club in high school, and I realized, oh, maybe I could improve the world, make my small dent in the universe, and do comedy. So I actually graduated GW early, moved to Chicago and took a bunch of comedy classes, Second City and IO and the Annoyance Theater. And then the job I was working, which is a whole other story. I don't want to drag out your podcast too much. I was doing Spanish bankruptcy law in Los Angeles. And again, I'm not a lawyer and my Spanish is not that good, but that moved me to LA. And then I did IO West and UCB and Second City and maybe one workshop at the Groundlings, and wound up at comedy.com, wound up at Funny or Die, and then met a nice girl from Grand Rapids. So we wound up back here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I still teach comedy, perform comedy. I've taught adults, I've taught kids. It's so fun. And I do think it helps with my business, if only for filtering bad clients out, where you can say, like, look, by the way, I do comedy on the side. If you take your business way too seriously, we're not going to be a good fit anyways.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. I could tell watching your TED Talk that you have comedy in your background because of some things you did. I'm not going to give it away because I want people to go watch it. But if you're listening, you'll have the link in the show notes to see the TED Talk. It's really awesome.
I think you might be talking about someone dropped their phone right in the middle of my TED Talk. And I've been stressing about this for weeks, and you don't want anything to go wrong. And I don't know if you can hear it in the recording, but it's just like this loud thud right at that. I'm making a solid TED Talk point. Thud. Okay, crap. Now I have to mention this and like at least talk about how we're all human beings and mistakes happen. But yeah, even before the TED Talk, I was backstage being like, yeah, it's weird because during comedy shows, you're like, the exits are here. Remember to tip your servers. And if you want to order a drink from the bar, you don't do any of that during a TED Talk. You need to reel it in, sound like a professional, and, try to get your point across.
I think you did a great job.
Thank you so much.
It was enjoyable and funny and educational. And so I hope everybody will check it out.
Yeah. Well, and I will talk about nerdy stuff as much as people let me, but you have to think like, is this going to resonate with an audience of everybody in the world? You kind of have to start at a high level and walk them through it and do a bit of that storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the historical facts and stories you referenced were very fitting as well.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
So yeah, hopefully if you're listening to this, you need to go watch the TED Talk. It's not that long. I promise you'll be glad you did.
I hope so. I hope it helps people be more optimistic about AI, or at least more willing to try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what do you do for your clients? I guess that's my other question I had for you.
So it is interesting to watch as all these ad platforms, a lot of what I do is buying ads, Google ads and Facebook ads, and catering them to the clients themselves. And I can talk about what my ideal client looks like if anyone listening is looking for some more digital marketing help. But as these networks and platforms improve, they're rolling out their own AI tools so that you can go to place a Facebook ad and say, hey, here's what kind of business I have, who is my ideal customer, and what sort of ad copy would resonate with them. And here's my existing photography. And can you generate more images that look like that or would resonate with my, again, ideal customer? Building those things automatically within the tool, as opposed to using ChatGPT or Bard to help create it yourself. But I will say I've also been on calls with a CEO, a CMO, a highly paid consultant, and myself. And we were debating about the wording on a landing page. And they joked, oh, Chris, you're going to use AI after this call, and then we'll reschedule our next meeting and review the copy. And it's like, no, I'll copy it over right now, ask it for a few variations, grab the best one. And in 5 seconds, I've just saved us all another half-hour meeting. So it wasn't perfect, but the amount of time and energy and frankly money we saved by using that tool that was available to us is so much better. Done is better than perfect, as they often say.
Very true. Very true. And once it's done, then you can see what's not working and make changes.
Exactly. And I love the data about it and diving into it. There's one time I was with a client. We scaled this client from nothing to $1 million in less than a year. And then one time we were testing out some ad copy. We had paid a copywriter. We had 4 different variations. And I was explaining to them, well, on Facebook, you could actually do 5. Let's test this crappy one. And it did way better than the other 4. And it's like, okay, but now the data is saying for some reason this resonates with our audience. Let's iterate on that. Let's improve upon that and see what is actually working. As smart as we people are, at the end of the day, you have to trust the data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I wonder if I had a question and I just lost it.
You can edit that out. We can take a second to think.
I wonder if totally lost it. I need to write down this time so I can fix this. Anyway, I'm just gonna ask you some questions and we're gonna see where it takes us.
I love it.
So the first one I want to ask you is, what is a moment in your life where you felt totally burned out or lost, and how did you find your way back from that?
Um, Gosh, I started working in TV news right around 2016 because I'd been running digital at Funny or Die and Comedy.com, and I've been building websites on dial-up internet since middle school. So I know digital stuff. And when we moved to Grand Rapids, I was digital media director at a local TV station. And I don't know if you remember 2016, but there was a lot of fake news. I don't know if you should trust local TV media, and a massive pushback against us. And, when you're on TV, maybe you don't see that so much unless people are calling in. But on the digital side, every Facebook post, every Twitter post would immediately get comments questioning it, calling it fake, saying we're biased. And that was just really draining. And I had moved from Los Angeles to Grand Rapids. I remember I walked out, it was probably April, maybe late March, and my car is covered in snow. And I'm just like, why do I work here? Why do I live here? What am I doing? But I liked the work. And weirdly, then I would go into a quarterly meeting at the TV station and they'd be happy with their numbers. And we reached 10,000 viewers. And I'd say, look, we did a Facebook Live. And the comments say, I couldn't watch TV because I was huddling in my basement during this severe weather event. The Facebook Live reached 1 million people and potentially saved lives. So I was really proud of the work I did. That's this blue award back here, Innovation in TV News. And it felt good to find the parts of your work that were meaningful and were helping people. And so I've tried to keep that as my North Star. I went from there to some digital marketing agencies. And then at the beginning of COVID was laid off and said, well, if I can just do this for people and keep, 99% of the profits for myself and have my own marketing tools and softwares and maybe some AI agents or freelancers if I need them, but trying to grow this thing in a way that makes sense for me and does good work for clients, that makes me happy and gives me more time to spend with my family.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, the question I was going to ask you is like, what is your version of a shower moment? And you kind of explained that at the beginning about the book, but I'm wondering do you have a lot of those kinds of ideas in the shower, or is it just a one-off thing?
So let's take a step back and talk about how brains work. I don't have an inner monologue. Like, I don't think in full sentences. And my wife thinks that's crazy. I think that sounds so loud, except in the shower, I'll often have arguments or talk through problems with myself or think back of, oh, you know what I should have said. So often it'll be thinking through ideas or things I should have said or done, or writing stand-up jokes or imagining what I would say on a talk show or during an argument or a TED talk or explaining things. So yeah, I often find that it is relaxing, letting your mind sort of open and wander without the other stresses of, hey, we're doing 20 things at once. Normally, I feel like my mind is sort of a cloud of everything that's happening all at the same time. But in the shower, it's just, you've got a little physical motion to distract your monkey brain, and then your higher brain can actually do some thinking. So yeah, I do think I do some of my best thinking in the shower.
It's true. There's a study that verywellmind.com did in 8 countries, and 72% of the people who responded said they had the most creative thoughts in the shower. And
I will
there's
say, I also do a lot of improv comedy on stage. So I'm probably skewed in that demographic where I intentionally find ways to be creative in front of an audience where it's sink or swim. You have to be funny right then in the show. I would say those are probably a little more creative because I have to be, because sometimes in the shower I'm too tired and just
yeah. True.
Yeah.
Well, the question I was thinking of earlier that I couldn't remember was AI prompts
Mm-hmm.
and how you feel about people selling prompts. Because once you use it a while, you learn how to ask the questions in the way that gives you the right answers. But there are people out there who are selling prompts to people, and I just wonder how you feel about that.
I don't know the correct answer, but I'll tell you how I feel about it is like hiring a freelancer where, yeah, I could probably figure this out myself, but if you have a good answer right now and I'm willing to pay for it, I'm not against it. I think to your point, you're probably better served creating something custom. I have a friend who was trying to hire and they got a ton of resumes with the exact same introductory letter. And it's like, it sounded AI generated, but if that's how you're using AI, you're not using AI correctly. Tell the AI, hey, here's what makes me stand out. Here's why I'm interested in this job. Here's how I think you should showcase my experience for this job. Now write 3 examples of this, and I'll copy and paste one to the client. If what you're giving them is, I am interested in this job because it pays money, why
Mhm.
even bother using AI at that point? Like,
Yeah.
tailor it to your message and make it good. Otherwise,
Mhm.
you're not using the tool properly. And it's less to me that, oh, can you believe they used an AI tool? They used it poorly. I don't trust them to use the tools at my workplace if they can't even be asked to use AI properly when writing a cover letter.
That is very true. But I think what I've learned is at the beginning I thought like, well, I don't know what to ask. So I thought I needed information from other people.
What
But
I've
the
been
more
telling customers and clients and people, and I think in the TED Talk even, is treat it like a friend whose memory you can erase. Don't be embarrassed. You can delete the chat afterwards if you need to, but just try. And if you don't know what to ask, just ask. There's really interesting data where sort of people our age are a little hesitant with it, but 20-year-olds are so used to text messaging, and actually 80-year-olds are now used to text messaging. Open ChatGPT on your phone, treat it like you're sending a text message, ask it what it can do, tell it about yourself and how it can improve your life, and it will tell you. Using AI is the best way to learn how to use AI.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I just thought it was an interesting question because I think there's a lot of people that are talking about that. So I thought it was a good question to ask
I
you.
think it was really hot when it first came out, and I also think there's a lot of AI books. As an AI book author, it's kind of silly to complain about this, but like, people can get a good answer for their specific problem directly from the AI. Why are you going to pay 99 cents for an AI generated book when you can ask ChatGPT for free? So I encourage people to just try it on their own for their own answers and avoid
Mhm.
those things if you can. But if you don't know where to get started, totally fine to do that. I've also talked to people who are nervous because they work in healthcare or legal or financial professions where they don't want to give away client data and specific things, but they do want to get advice in general on what they would do for their clients. Then I can see why you wouldn't want to say, hey, look, Steve lives in this part of town with this diagnosis or with these assets, because
Sure.
then you're giving away that data. But saying, hey, I have a client who presents this way or has these buckets of assets in general, how should we refinance or how should we diagnose them? Yeah, I think in some sense, if you want to be more general with it, that's fine. But the real value here is how specific and personal it can be.
Yeah, it's true. It can be. And then you kind of think about, all of the information that you give it,
Mm-hmm.
it now is in its database, right? So when
Mm-hmm.
someone else is Googling, or not Google, but when someone else is asking about you,
Mm-hmm.
it has a lot of information that you may or may not want to be public.
I think the question is, do I care? Like, I think the government and these major companies already know more about us than we expect. So, how much more am I giving to AI by using it? It does make me a little nervous that it will one day know everything and manipulate us with dark patterns into staying complacent little obedient citizens, except for the fact that that's good. I don't want, bad people to do bad things, but I do want some freedom in how we use these tools. The example I use a lot is if I'm trying to schedule a golf lunch with Steve and I email Steve about it, maybe Steve and I both get ads for golf courses. Do I care where we go? I mean, if Steve and I still get to meet and have that human connection and the golf course is willing to pay Google to advertise to both of us, who's really losing out there? I guess the golf courses are spending money to advertise on Google, but now we get to learn about new golf courses because those advertisements were placed. So the downside to catered ads is they might be too good. Like, is that a problem that we're hitting people with ads that are relevant to them? I'm not sure. And this level of, oh, it's creepy, I'm giving up privacy. Well, we're all carrying cell phones everywhere we go for every purchase we make, for everything we do. So how much convenience are we willing to trade in exchange for our privacy? I think a lot, but that's a personal decision. I do see a future where being able to disconnect from the AI, from the grid entirely, even for an hour, will be a luxury item. But I hope we still have access to do that. I love doing that. Just go for a swim, go to the beach, have some time away from it all.
Absolutely.
That's
I
a
think
lot. I know I've had a lot of caffeine this morning and I like to ramble. So thank you for letting me go off on tangents.
that's okay. I think it's a great conversation because it's the level of people's knowledge of AI is so all over the place right now.
Hmm.
Some people know a lot about it and some people know zero. And so
Hmm.
I think it's a great conversation to have. Um, so my next question for you is, what was the biggest lie you used to believe about success?
The biggest lie I used to believe about success is I think a super common one that we had growing up where hard work equals success. And it's just not true. Especially once I became a manager, there were some very smart, very hardworking people who were frankly hard to work with. And they were great at their jobs, but I couldn't promote them because I didn't trust them to relay that information or to manage people well, or frankly, to be a team player. I think sometimes this I'm going to do all the hard work myself is damaging to you professionally, but also, by the way, damaging in relationships. I think there's this, I don't know if you watch Rick and Morty, but there's this whole thing where they go to therapy and it's like, hey, maybe you should just listen to the people who want to help you and not think that you're a better person because you can do it by yourself. We live in a society and being able to rely on other people isn't a failure. It's the point of living in a society.
Well, it's your answer is exactly why I wrote this book and started this podcast, because I was one of those people who had entrepreneur parents, grew up thinking I had to prove myself to everybody and anybody, and had my first business at 14 and worked 30 years, 18 hours a day, and thought that was normal. And that's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, is to help people understand that you don't have to do that.
Yes.
There is a better way.
On the flip side, I see people a lot more successful than me that are a lot less hardworking and a lot less smart. So, like, maybe the answer wasn't hard work all along. There's definitely an element of luck to this. But I think to me now, I think the answer is find the work life balance you're comfortable with and keep going. As long
Yeah.
as you're able to keep going, it'll be okay. But if you can't continue at this pace, stop hurting yourself and find a balance where you can.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's not that hard work isn't needed or appreciated. It's just that there are better ways. And I think it's
Mhm.
all about strategy and mindset.
Hmm. There are soft skills. There's dumb memes about it, and I have all my business books down here. Below my sci-fi books, you can see my business books of just like, yeah, you can try to cut down a tree with a blunt axe or spend an hour sharpening it, and it'll go much quicker. Like hard work for the sake of hard work used to be held up as this gold standard of American dream. And the answer is smarter work is probably better for you, better for the people involved. Going back to AI, using the tool available to you should be your default, not I will do this bespoke by hand because I can. We have factories now. You don't need to make everything by hand. And there's always a market for bespoke and custom and human and, something far more personal. Please keep those personal things personal. But if you're just making factory made widgets, you don't have to make every single one of those things by hand to prove how hard you worked. Nobody cares. You're only hurting yourself.
Very true. 100% agree. So my next question is, I
Uh-oh.
feel like I'm on
When you
Jeopardy.
laugh before you ask a question, I get nervous.
It's okay. Where was there a time when you had to say no to something that others thought you should do?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. So we were already married, my wife and we had already decided to move to Michigan, and I was doing a lot of improv comedy and some stand-up comedy, and my friend said, "Hey, someone just backed out. Do you want to go on tour doing stand-up?" And I was like, "Oh, that could be a total career shift. This is what you do. You get known, you put it on your resume, you do more and more stand-up circuits." And I just thought through the end of it of like, I don't want to be away from home and my new wife and our potential kids and out on the road and telling the same jokes over and over and over again. I like doing improv shows with people I know in the same place. So I turned it down. And part of what helped at the time was it was something absurd of like, you'll be gone for 3 weeks and make $200. And I'm like, well, buddy, no, I have a full-time job. I'm not going to do. There were a lot of good reasons to turn it down, but it was also this very clear opportunity of you don't have to audition. I need someone. I am willing to hire you today for this thing that ostensibly is really cool for a stand-up comedy career. And I said no. And I think about it semi regularly, but I don't regret it. It was just a very different life of, Yeah, you could be touring all through small colleges in the middle of the country and making okay money to tell jokes. Like, is that a better life? Probably not. It's a different life. It's an interesting life, but I am glad I wound up where I did.
Awesome. Awesome. So, do you have a ritual or habit or practice that helps you reconnect with yourself when life gets loud?
Therapy. I think more people should be in therapy. And I think I didn't even ask this question until after I got in therapy, because I think it begs the question of who is yourself and what are you trying to reconnect with? And how many layers of your parents' generational trauma are you working through? And what are you without those traumas or those neuroses or those psychoses where, you know, I love doing comedy and entertaining people, and there's a small part of me that does it because I wanted my parents' attention. Now, if you remove that, do I still like entertaining people? Yeah, I think so, but it started for a different reason than why I keep doing it. So finding what really matters to yourself almost uncovers these things of, well, is that part of me, or is that just a training from the environment I grew up in? And that's still part of you, but you don't have to keep doing things you don't enjoy just because you've always done them. So I think therapy and really thinking through some journaling. I did Tai Chi for a while. I strongly recommend that. It's very centering. But I was then reading about it's the PERMA mindset, where it's all the things that make a happy life, which I translated into read, write, exercise, socialize, gratitude. And gratitude's very important, some sort of higher power, being part of a bigger something and being grateful for where you are in the world, but also socializing with people and making sure that you're part of the real world. And I guess walking and exercising, some sort of physical movement. I hate that one. It's just, I hate how everyone's right that makes you feel better to actually exercise, because I don't want to do it. It's hard work.
It's true. But like you said, it could just be a walk with your earphones and you're listening to this podcast,
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
could be lots of things.
Yeah.
So, are you an only child?
I am the baby. I'm the youngest child. So I have an older sister who is a lawyer, and my older brother, I think, got a master's in computer science and is way smarter than I am, and I always thought was way handsomer. And so I was just like, I'll be the funny one, I guess. And it's just life and figuring it out. And I was the one to move to Los Angeles and do comedy for a while. So I think everyone was a little surprised when I grew up and settled in the Midwest and had some kids and a wife, but I'm loving it. I don't know what I expected out of life, but I'm having a really good time.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So, what role has slowing down played in your success or creativity?
I was just saying, I became so much more successful when I stopped giving a shit. And not to say I don't care, but there's this line between I am going to be anxious about every email I send, every ad campaign I launch, every ad, every line of copy I write, and just saying, "Hey guys, I know this is going to be good enough. I've done this long enough that I can be confident about it." I tell it to people as the confidence of a straight white man in America, of just like, "Yes, I'm privileged. Yes, it'll be okay. Yes, I have a fallback plan, but also none of this is brain surgery. And even if it's brain surgery, like, they came to you to solve the problem. You're not the cause of the problem. You're going to do your best to fix it. And then let's move on. And if we don't fix that part, we'll find something else to fix it." We
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, done is better than perfect. So take a breath, slow it down, do what you can today. You can always tweak it tomorrow. There's a poem I love. Part of it is just, in a minute there is time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. So just, it's okay. Take the minute, think it through, and if you need to change it in the next minute, that's okay. Do the best you can with what you have. And then there's this whole thing about cancel culture, and were people rude and more racist and sexist and crappy back then? That means we're growing. If you can look back and feel shame about what you did previously, that means you have grown over time, and that is good. Take a breath, be grateful for where you are, and keep moving forward. Man, we're covering a lot in this podcast.
No, that was good. Um, so I talk a lot in the shower genius context about personal freedom because I used to laugh out loud about work-life balance when people said that. I was like, yeah, whatever. That doesn't
Did you
make
say
sense.
18 hours a day since you were 14? That's crazy.
I mean, yeah, I worked a lot. I think part of the reason I'm on this journey is because I was so regretful of missing so many things in my life with friends and family because I was always working. I was always too busy. Like we took our honeymoon in our 16th year of marriage.
Jeez.
So, that was normal to me for a long time, but it's not anymore. And so I used to laugh at work life balance. And then I think that there is a way to have balance in your life. I don't know that I will ever call it work life,
Mm.
but I think that there is a way to design your life and your schedule and your commitments in a way that your life is more balanced between putting yourself first and loving what you do and being able to spend time with the people that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I define personal freedom. And so my question is, how do you define personal freedom and what does it look like for you now?
I have two young kids, so I don't know. But I think being grateful and able to spend as much time with them as I can, and the flexibility of running my own thing, and the prioritization for my clients. I mean, I know other agencies who take on 100 clients for $20 a month, and then that's fine. They're making some money, but they can't give a level of attention to their clients. The clients wind up resenting it, and they don't value the work they're doing. Whereas I can take on one or two clients and make sure that I am covering all those bases, and that makes sure that the baseline is covered. And then you're able to expand from there and focus on doing quality, meaningful work for people at a higher level where you're not getting bogged down in details, but you're able to provide them with a really quality service and they're happy with the product because you are touching every part of it and you're invested enough to care, as opposed to a factory where they're churning out, the same bland content for everyone in that vertical. And then you're competing against each other with the exact same content and ads and images. And I've seen it more times than I'd like to admit. But I think being able to do work you're proud of and then go live your life, and then people can almost smell it on you, where people come up to me and they're like, "Oh, what do you do again? I know someone who needs that." And so it just sort of builds on itself, being able to say, "Yeah, I'm good enough that I trust that we can build this thing together. And I hope that we can continue to do that." If that makes sense. It was a bit off topic ramble again.
No, that makes total sense. I think when in my former business prior to the pandemic, um, I I had 5 employees and 30 contractors who worked for me, and we had a very successful business. But I was in that rut of thinking I had to be the first one in the office and the last one to leave, and I had to be
Mm-hmm.
making sure that I was at every event for every client. And when I took a step back and delegated more, my business doubled.
Mm-hmm.
And it also gave me, like, I was always really good at training and teaching everybody who worked with me, but delegating them and giving them more responsibility and just being
Yes.
there if they needed me was much different than trying to control everything. And it was a really big lesson for me. And it was really the turning point of, working all those years for so long and so many hours to enjoying what I was doing and focusing on the parts that I really was good at.
I think delegating is an easy thing to understand and a really, really hard thing to actually feel and to do. Where I was at a leadership development when I was at the TV news station, Tegna flew us all down to DC, and people at my level were constantly checking their websites and making sure everything was updated and that the views went from 12 to 14 views on the article. And it's like, are you delegating this work to your staff at all? Because you're not focused on the bigger picture if you're this deep down in the details. And then I also think I've been talking to a company recently where they had me in to do a webinar to talk to their staff and say, look, the CEO is a great guy. He does not want to come in and say, here's how we're using AI today. He wants me to teach all of you how to use AI. And then the actual ground level employees can say, you know what sucks at my job? This building a standard operating procedure or filling out this form that we're legally required to have. Can I use AI to create a draft of it? Then my human self can finalize it and make sure it's technically accurate and all those things real humans still need to do. But make this 18-hour task into a 1-hour task. Yes, your CEO will gladly pay $20 a month to save you 17 hours of work. And so we're seeing a lot of benefits from that, where it's a bottom up sort of empowering the people below you to speak up and make those decisions on how they can best optimize things on their own. Absolutely. And the other thing I was going to say is using AI I have a tax guy and a financial guy, and they're pricey. So I use AI to be like, hey, I think this is how this works. Should I put this here, or should we do this with this? Does this make sense? Do these numbers make sense? And then turn around to my actual human being and say, here's what I think we do. You're the expert. Rather than having a 2-hour meeting where you have to teach this to me, I suggest either A or B. And they'll say, well, B doesn't work. Let's do A. Now I've saved everyone time in that meeting. I've learned a little bit, and I haven't depended entirely on the AI. I still have that human in the loop to make the final decision. So all great ways to use AI and to delegate and to make your life quicker, better.
Yeah, I like that. I've even asked it stuff about health questions, like,
Yeah.
or I don't know, all kinds of different things, like asking it about life insurance and
Yeah.
what companies do what and what to ask. And it gives you so much. It doesn't necessarily give you all the number one right answer for you, but it
For
gives
sure.
you a lot of information to contemplate to
And
get
I
the
love
right
learning. Point me in the right direction, and I'm happy to ask follow-up questions or do research on my own. But if I don't know what I don't know where to start. Right after the TED Talk, I'm clearly not an expert in gerontology health, but an older woman came up to me and said, hey, if I wanted to ask it about I don't remember it now, her goiter or something. It was a weirdly personal question right after. And I was like, I don't know, but just open it and chat with it and see what it says. And then you can take that information to your doctor. I wouldn't trust it right away and start applying medicines to myself. But I would say, hey, I think this might be a case of this based on the things that I don't have time to say to my doctor in a 10, 15-minute meeting, but I can sit and have a 4-hour conversation with. Now I have the language, the education to go back to my doctor and much quicker get to the point. And that's really what I'm trying to help people do, is optimize to the point where we don't have to get bogged down in these details, but we can do the things that are meaningful to us effectively.
Yeah, it makes research much easier.
Much easier. Yeah.
I have two more questions, and they are more personal than business. So, what is something that you let go of, either mentally, physically, or emotionally, that made space for something better?
That is a very personal question. Gosh, I'll be vague because it's such a personal question.
Okay.
But I think sometimes I'm being too vague. I think there can be an expectation of Hollywood standards of how life should go. And I think not expecting every aspect of your life to be perfect is a big step towards having a nearly perfect life, where again, that gratitude, that having social connections, doing some exercise, reading and writing, and having time to do the things that you enjoy doing is going to do way, way more for your mental health than waiting for the world to be exactly how you want it to be. It's just not going to happen. And that is a really, really hard lesson to learn, to try to control things that you have no control over. So control the things you can and let go of the other stuff. That was so vague around your question, but I
No,
think I
I
was attempting to control other people's lives. I don't know how to describe it, but their relationship toward me. And now it's okay, I'm going to do me and not worry about that.
I think that's good, because I also think that a lot of us, I mean, especially the boomer generation, or people in around my age, are like, I'm in my 50s. So if you spent all these decades of working really hard and proving yourself and pleasing other people and all these things, and then you get to a place where I lost everything in 2020. I lost my business, I lost everything. Went through bankruptcy and was really dealing with losing a friend to suicide, which made me, have to deal with my own attempt that I had hidden for 2 decades. And I think it was a really big time of reflection for me. And I think what came out of that was, there's this book I read called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. I don't know if you've heard of it, but he talks about your zone of excellence versus your zone of genius. And the zone of excellence is something you're very good at, you do a good job. People think you are really good at it. They come ask you questions about it and they think you're the expert. But what I learned is I had been operating in my zone of excellence my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found after the whole pandemic situation that we all went through is that I finally found my zone of genius because I liked what I did. I thought I would do it forever. I thought I would sell my business and retire probably 5 years from now. But that's not what happened. And it forced me to dig deeper. And it forced me to find the things that I was really passionate about without having to talk about the paycheck that came with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it that I just really want to do? And most of it is just helping people have a better life and finding more balance and taking care of their mental health and all of those things. And so it was just so much, it's so much clearer to me now, having gone through those processes of digging for what am I supposed to
Yeah.
do with my life.
Well, and it can often take those sort of traumatic or big events to make you take stock and think about it. But in my improv teaching, I talk about it as tightening the microscope or opening the telescope, where do
Mhm.
you want to take a super granular look at this, or really take a step back and look at what am I doing with my life? And am I optimizing things I even care about? And am I renting out 10 more chairs to this event? Do I care if that happens? Or do I want 3 more hours this week to spend reading a book in a hammock? If that's what's important to me and I'm going to survive till tomorrow with that change, fine. And I'm not encouraging people to just be lazy, but I think there's been this hustle and grind culture for way too long that is hurting us. And to start saying, how can I optimize in a way that still lets me be human, and then be human?
Mhm. Agreed.
Yeah.
So if you
We're all
could,
going through it, we're all going through it, figuring it out for ourselves.
it's true. It's true. Um, if you could give your younger self one permission slip, what would it say?
This is probably silly, but I would just say ask her out. Just like, you're surrounded by people your own age for the first like 25 years of your life. And I think you're all nervous that you're in a new space. And that's not true. I would open it up to, in Los Angeles, I often felt like those were the cool kids. And I was, an outsider at that party. We had all just met. We were all taking the same classes together. Give yourself permission to be present with the people you're with, because you're there. You've made it to that room. I've seen a lot of, from myself and from other people, self-limiting, saying like, oh, I'm the imposter here and all these other people know what they're doing. A lot of those people are probably way dumber than you. Like, on average, half the people you meet are dumber than you, right? That's how averages work. So like, if you're shy to speak up, or you don't think that you belong somewhere and you're already there, stop overthinking it and start being where you are.
Mhm. That's a
Hope that
really good
helps someone.
answer.
I hope that helps.
It's a really good answer. Um, so if you had to finish the sentence that says, my genius shows up when what would it be?
I've had other people say improvise. I think just letting your brain sort of wander and make connections in a really good improv show is like, oh, how did you get there? And then part of the comedy and joy is showing the B when you jump from A to C, telling them, hey, here's how my brain works. Isn't B funny? Is like, why would your brain ever connect A to B to C? But I don't know. I think that's really enjoyable. And part of that is collaborating with other humans. And part of that,
Mhm.
to take it back to AI, is collaborating with AI. In the TED Talk, I talk about software developers often have a rubber duck on their desk, where if there's a problem, they'll talk it out with the rubber duck, because they just need a sounding board to really explain what the problem is. And I think using AI is infinitely better than that, because it can talk back to you. But it's not perfect and it's not human. So if you can do that with friends and collaborate and improvise, and then I talk to someone about, look, maybe AI takes over the world and none of us have jobs, and what are we going to do all day? Maybe we'll just play Dungeons and Dragons and make up stories with our friends. That sounds fun. That could be everything we all do, and we all get to make up our own stories just with the people we care about. Great. That's okay. That will be fun and enjoyable for the rest of time.
That's a great point. I think the human connection and the collaboration part is so key.
Mhm.
No matter what we're doing, whether it's business or personal. I think it's huge, and I think it took me a long time to really understand that.
Yeah, and I had a potential lead client who didn't like some of the comedy or more funny suggestions I was making during our first introductory client call. And like I said, we're going to be stuck in a contract together for 6 months, 12 months. I don't want to be dealing with you every week if you can't take a joke. Like, that's okay. I will survive without this one client. If every time I talk to you, I feel that pang of, oh, I don't want to do this. I would much rather be excited to do work with you and for you if I know you're a good person that I want to spend time being around.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Well, Chris, this has been such a great conversation, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. If every episode's this good, I can't wait till they all get published. I can't wait to listen.
Well, thank you. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about. I wrote this book 3 years ago and created a course, and then did nothing with it because I was focused on my nonprofit. And so I'm super excited to get this out in the world.
Well, congratulations. I hope it's amazing, and I hope to hear the podcast when it's live. And the other thing I say at the end of podcasts is, look, if the robots don't take over the world, we should touch base in a year and catch up.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dina. Have a good one.